Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful land of enchantment, which is known as the state of Mexico. And I think I tongue twisted there, but that's okay. And today's date, August 9th, 2015. Yeah, just kicking back, decided to do another episode because a few things crossed my mind. I was listening to some of the stuff from my colleagues from Voice Rebellion Radio. Unfortunately, haven't heard the whole entire episode. However, there were claims some of them were being accused of, some of the talk show hosts, anti-Semites, without any merit, as far as I'm concerned. It was mainly focused on Ukraine. And so a lot of folks are talking smack, blowing smoke, whatever you want to call it, using unmeritable rhetoric on the area of Ukraine. But I always recommend folks read The Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski. You can go on your search engine. I recommend Startpage, DuckDuckGo, and GoodGopher.com. That one's not too bad either. And it's a PDF format, and you can read it for yourself, or go to the library or to check it out, or purchase it at your local bookstore. You'd be amazed what Brzezinski has in store of conquering Eurasia, which Ukraine is one of them. However, first thing I want to be addressing, check this out earlier today from shtfplan.com. You figure it out. And it's more like a thought criminal platform. It's entitled Pennsylvania to become first state to use pre-crime statistics in criminal sentencing. 1984. This was originally published by Michael Krieger at Liberty Blitzkrieg, and there's a link for that. But it's interesting here. It goes little emblem pre-crime, Department of Pre-Crime, District of Columbia pre-crime. And as it reads here, criminal sentencing has been long based on the present crime and sometimes the defendant's past criminal record. In Pennsylvania, judges could soon consider a new dimension, the future. Pennsylvania is on the verge of becoming one of the first states in the country to base criminal sentences not only on what crimes people have been convicted of, but also on whether they are deemed likely to commit additional crimes. Sounds like thought criminology, I would say. As early as next year, judges there could receive statistically derived tools known as risk assessment to help them decide how much prison time, if any, to assign. From the 538 article, should prison sentences be based on crimes that haven't been committed yet? That's from the base on there. And to continue on, as technology generally continues to advance, one thing you can be sure of is the criminal justice system's use of innovative new tools will grow exponentially. This can be a good thing, but it can also be very dangerous thing. Pennsylvania's new law that permits the use of data showing whether people are deemed likely to commit additional crimes in criminal sentencing is a perfect example on how an over-reliance on technology can be a threat to liberty and due process. Rather than explaining my position on the matter right here, I think it's best to make point within the excerpts from the article itself from the 538, as it reads here. Criminal sentencing has been long based on the present crime, and sometimes the defendant's past criminal record. In Pennsylvania, judges could soon consider a new dimension, the future. Pennsylvania is on the verge of becoming one of the first states in the country to base criminal sentences not only on what crimes have been convicted of, but also on whether they are deemed to likely commit additional crimes. As early as next year, judges there could receive statistically derived tools known as risk assessments to help them decide how much prison time, if any, to assign. Risk assessments have existed in various forms for a century, but over the past 2 decades they have spread through the American justice system. Driven by advances in social science, the tools try to predict recidivism. Sorry about that. Repeating offending or breaking the rules of probation or parole using statistical probabilities based on factors such as age, employment history, and prior criminal record. They are now used at some stage of the criminal justice process in nearly every state. Many court systems use the tools to guide decisions about which prisons to release on parole, for example, and risk assessments are becoming increasingly popular as a way to help set bail for inmates awaiting trial. But Pennsylvania is about to take a step most states have until now resisted for adult defendants using risk assessment in sentencing itself. The state commission is putting the finishing touches on a plan that, if implemented as expected, could allow some offenders considered low risk to get shorter prison sentences than they would otherwise, or avoid incarceration entirely. Those deemed high risk could spend more times behind bars. There are more than 60 risk assessment tools in use across the U.S., and they are very widely, but in their simplest form, they are questionnaires typically filled out by a jail staff member, probation officer, or psychologist that assigns points to offenders based on anything from demographic factors to family background to criminal history. The resulting scores are based on statistical probabilities derived from previous offenders' behavior. A low score designates an offender as low risk and could result in lower bail, less prison time, or less restrictive probation on parole terms. A high score can lead to tougher sentences on tighter monitoring. The risk assessment trend is controversial. Critics have raised numerous questions. It is fair to make decisions in an individual case based on what similar offenders have done in the past? Is it acceptable to use characteristics that might be associated with race or social economic status, such as criminal records of persons' parents? Even if the states can resolve such philosophical questions, there are also practical ones. What to do about unreliable data? Which of the many available tools, some of them licensed by for-profit companies, should policymakers choose? Even some supporters of risk assessment in bail and parole worry that using tool for sentencing carries echoes of Minority Report, locking people up for crimes that might commit in the future. In a speech on the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers last August, then Attorney General Eric Holder said risk assessment tools can be useful in directing offenders toward rehabilitative programs, allowing them to shorten their prison sentences, but he criticized the use of such tools at the sentencing phase by basing sentencing decisions on static factors and immutable characteristics like the defendant's education level, socioeconomic background, or neighborhood. That might exacerbate unwarranted and unjust disparities that are already far too common in our criminal justice system and in our society, he said. Well, I actually agree with Eric Holder for once. For him to take such a decent position, it must mean bank profits aren't threatened. I'll have to agree on that, even though I don't like that bastard. All right. Foskew's objection underscores one of the central questions in the risk assessment debate. It is fair to look at the behavior of a group when deciding the fate of an individual. Statistics, after all, can't say whether Foskew will commit another crime, and he believes he's doing everything possible to avoid further run-ins with the law. there is a little question that well-designed risk assessment tools work. If in that they predict behavior better than unaided expert opinion. Over the past several decades, dozens of social scientific studies have been published comparing professional predictions of risk to predictions made by statistics. When implemented correctly, whether in the fields of medicine, finance, or criminal justice, statistical actuarial tools are accurate at predicting human behavior, about 10% more accurate than experts assessing without the assistance of such tools, according to a 2000 paper by a team of psychologists at the University of Minnesota. But to critics, just because a trait predicts crime doesn't mean it is fair use in sentencing decisions. Pennsylvania's proposed tools will take into account factors like sex and age. They are beyond an individual's control. It will also include a question on where offenders live and in some cases penalize residents of urban areas who are far more likely to be black. Perhaps most controversially, the Sentencing Commission's draft assessment tool will factor in an individual's history of arrest, not just convictions. Even using convictions is potentially problematic. Blacks are more likely than whites to be convicted of marijuana possession, for an example, even though that they use the drug at rates equivalent to whites. But arrests are even more racially skewed and convictions, and public defender groups in Pennsylvania think their use to determine sentencing may be unconstitutional. Well, I have to say, respectfully, it is unconstitutional, but I will proceed. Using risk assessment in criminal sentencing is a thornier issue. It is a higher stakes decision point in terms of sometimes someone's liberty, Kurt said. It definitely makes me a little bit more uncomfortable. This is the point. We're discussing whether or not to use statistics on potential future crimes in determining how much time a person will remain involuntarily locked in a cage. Obviously, there will be errors, and any error that leads to someone spending more time in prison based on a flawed prediction is ethically indefensible. If you want to use such statistics to only reduce punishment, I could be in favor of it, but to use it to justify harsher sentencing seems like a horrible idea. In Pennsylvania, at least, such policy discussions have drawn little public attention despite the best efforts of the Sentencing Commission. In addition to publishing its detailed reports, has held public hearings across the state. Those hearings drew so few people that Bergstrom, the Commission's executive director, extended the public comment period through the end of the year. Sad. Based on the work the Commission has done so far, Bergstrom says he's leaning towards using the tool to identify outliers, low-risk individuals to defer from prison altogether, and high-risk individuals to flag for extra time or treatment. That would be a fairly limited approach, but it wouldn't avoid the central question of whether offenders should spend more time behind bars simply because of how statistical tools say they will behave in the future. Reading the above made me think of an article I've been meaning to write for about several weeks. It was written by Zoltan Estevan, a so-called futurist, a presidential candidate for the Transhumanist Party, and published at Motherboard. Here are a few excerpts. The death penalty is one of America's most conscientious issues. Critics complain that capital punishment is inhumane, pointing out how some executions have failed to quickly kill criminals and instead torture them. Supporters of the death penalty fire back, saying capital punishment deters violent crime in society and serves justice to wronged victims. Complicated the matter is that political, ethnic, and religious lines don't easily distinguish death penalty advocates from its critics. In fact, only 31 states even allow capital punishment, so America is largely divided on the issue. Regardless of the debate, which shows no signs of easing as we head into the 2016 elections, I think technology will change the entire conversation in the next 10 or 20 years, rendering many of the most potent issues obsolete. For example, it is likely we will have cranial implants in 2 decades in time that will be able to send signals to our brain that manipulate our behaviors. Those implants will be able to control out-of-control tempers and violent actions, and maybe even unsavory thoughts. This type of tech raises the obvious question. Instead of killing someone who has committed a terrible crime, should we instead alter their brain and the way it functions to make them a better person? Where to begin? Anyone who thinks this is a good idea or solution is either incredibly naive or a certified status control freak. In case of Zoltan, I think he's probably both. First of all, since the state will be administering these lobotomies, they will have to come up with definitions for unsavory thoughts. They also will have a monopoly on deciding what characterizes a better person. In the name of fighting unsavory thoughts and making people better, the government can go in and change your entire brain. This is a solution? No. This is a despotian nightmare. Despite me a nightmare, only a complete status could support. Moving along. Recently, the commercially available Think, which is THYNC, device made headlines for being able to alter our moods. Additionally, nearly 500,000 people already have implants in their head, most to overcome deafness, but some to help Alzheimer's or epilepsy. The technology to change behavior in the altered brain isn't science fiction. The science, in some ways, is already here, and certainly poised to grow, especially with Obama's $3 billion brain initiative, of which $70 million went to DARPA, partially for cranial implant research. Some people may complain that implants are too invasive and extreme, but similar outcomes, especially in altering criminals' minds to fit society's goals, may be accomplished by genetic engineering, nanotechnology, or even super drugs. In fact, many criminals are already given powerful drugs which make them quite different that might be without them. After all, some people, including myself, believe much violent crime is a version of mental disease. To better fit society's goals, what do you think will be determining society's goals, Zoltan? The people? I think not. It will be decided by a handful of oligarchs who will be able to choose who gets their brains carved up. If anyone has a mental disease, it might be you. With so much scientific possibility on the term horizon of changing someone's criminal behavior and attitudes, the real debate society may end up having soon is not whether to execute people, but whether society should advocate for cerebral reconditioning of criminals. In other words, a lobotomy. This reminds me of Clockwork Orange, you know? So if you ever read the book or seen the movie, check it out. The movie with Malcolm McDowell. One other method that could be considered for death row criminals is cryonics. The movie Minority Report, which features precogs who can see crime activity in the future, shows other ways violent criminals are dealt with, namely a form of suspended animation where criminals dreams out their lives. So the concept isn't unheard of. With this in mind, maybe violent criminals even should legally be given for option for cryonics, to be returned to a living state in the future where the reconditioning of the brain and the new preventive technology, such as ubiquitous surveillance, means they could no longer commit violent acts. He seems to think ubiquitous surveillance is a great thing. I said before, the only one here is truly a dangerous mental disease seems to be Zoltan. That disease is statism. Remember this article, Florida man sentenced to 2.5 years in jail for having sex on the beach. It seems like he'd be a great candidate for Zoltan administered lobotomy to remedy his unsavory thoughts. Or what about this one? Bilderberg 2015, where criminals mingle with politicians. I think it's safe to assume that the Bilderbergers will escape the brain knife. What complete stupidity. In Liberty, Michael Krieger. And I have to agree with him on this. This is very dangerous. absolutely hailing to Big Brother. 1984, 101. Assuming you're going to look at someone's future, how about if it doesn't happen? It will be one of the most dangerous things in history. Okay? In addition, it will actually violate the Pennsylvania Constitution as well, especially on due process. You know, and so we're going to do. You're going to tell the jurors all about this, and they're going to go, okay? No, the jurors have that power to say hell no. And we can look at some of the areas here. You know, Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it says here, inherited rights of mankind. Section 1, all men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherited and indefeasible rights, among which are those enjoying and defending life, liberty, and acquiring, possessing, protected property, and reputation, and of pursuing their own happiness. And of course, we can go a little bit down, you know, fair trial, of course, trial by jury, they have that right. And effects, you know, we hit that as well. You know, Article 1, Section 8. You know, because that's controlling people's thoughts is totally insane here, you know. And of course, Article 1, Section 9 of rights of the accused in criminal prosecutions. And all criminal prosecutions, the accused have the right to be heard by himself and his counsel, demand the nature and cause of the accusation against him, to meet the witnesses face to face, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and in prosecutions by indictment or information, speedy public trial by impartial jury of vicinage. He cannot be compelled to give evidence against himself, nor can he be deprived of his life, liberty, and property, unless by the judgment of his peers or the law of the land. The use of a suppressed voluntary admission or voluntary confession to impeach the credibility of a person may be permitted, and shall not be construed as compelling a person to give evidence against himself. And this is what is really scary, okay? They're going to try to jeopardize those particular areas in their own state constitution and U.S. Constitution too, especially the Bill of Rights. You know, Article 5, 6, and 9, okay, of the U.S. Constitution. And of course, it says here, you know, Section 10, except hereafter as provided, no person shall, or an indictable offense may be proceeded against criminality by information. That's this is my Jake's dreaming here. And of course here, of course, is due process. Okay, Article 1, Section 10. So we could keep on going here. And you know what? It'd be interesting too. Courts be open, suits against the Commonwealth. All courts shall be open, and every man for injury done in him and his lands, goods, persons, and reputation shall the remedy by due course of the law, and 8, and justice administered without sale, denial, or delay. Suits may be brought against the Commonwealth in such matter, in such courts, in such cases as legislator may be by law direct. So right there, they can expect a blowback. The state of Pennsylvania can get sued for using this program, and what they're doing here says no power of suspending law shall be exercised unless by the legislator or by its authority. So it will be unnecessary. So they have to honor their oath, okay, which is in Article 1 of this. So and of course, excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel punishment inflicted. So you can't torture. And it says here, let me see, debtors, ex facto post laws, impairment of contracts is Article 1, Section 17. It states no ex post facto law nor any law impairing the obligation of contracts or making irrevocable of any grant of special privileges or of immunity shall be passed. So technically right there, it's going to be contract with these big businesses. So that, in my view, in a good faith, conflicts with this own Constitution. And we can go a little bit further here. Okay, and no attainder shall work corruption of blood, nor except during the life of the offender, forfeiture of the state to the Commonwealth. That's Article 1, Section 19. And we will continue on a little bit more. Article 1, Section 25, reservation of powers and people to guard against the transgression of the high powers which we have delegated. We declare that everything in this article is accepted out of the general powers of government and shall forever remain inviolate. So right there, that breaches it too. And we can go a little bit further. And that is really it. So a lot of the stuff I address does violate the Pennsylvania's Constitution, Article 1 to be exact. So, all in good faith, this platform, what they want to do with pre-crime statistics is unacceptable, null and void. Alright, and I don't care if these vultures like it or not. I'm just giving people my views on this. And the people in the Keystone State needs to pay close attention, and furthermore, it should be invalid, null and void. Alright, and the jurors have that power to say hell no as well. So don't be afraid of the people of your so-called leaders, or whatever you want to call leaders or judicial branch of the government. They need you more than you need them. So make sure you have to pay attention, because this can be, if this gets done successfully, they're going to use the propaganda matrix and make sure every state within the union will have to use these things. And I find this very 1984 attributes, police state 101. So like I always say yes to freedom and no to tyranny. This should be null and void across the board. And next one here, I know I did address the stuff on the Black Lives Matter, that they did a little thing on what happened with Senator Bernie Sanders in Seattle. And this one here came from ringofireradio.com. It's from the Ring of Fire staff. This is entitled Progressive. Don't waste your money on the group Black Lives Matter. They're actually hurting minority progress. And as it reads here, members of Black Lives Matter stormed the podium at Bernie Sanders' rally in Seattle, forcing Bernie from the stage without him being able to address the crowd of thousands who came to hear his message of raising the plight of those struggling in America. No matter how calm and peaceful the crowd was, and no matter what organizers promised in regard to allowing them to speak, these individuals simply wanted to commandeer the stage to prevent Bernie's message from being heard. This is not the first time they did it. Why was it about Bernie Sanders that threatens the leadership of BLM more than other Democratic and Republican candidates? The answer is actually frightening. The leader of the BLM likes the status quo unless the single focus of future equality is centered on black women, and even more so black lesbian women. They like racial tension over requests for universal growth for all persons struggling, because it gives them power and a voice. This obviously is not what the vast majority of those supporting BLM believe, but is what the leadership believes. It is for this reason that the leadership is not standing up against members who claim to speak on their behalf and who prevent Bernie Sanders from speaking at rallies. The present Democratic and Republican leadership will continue to promote racial divide by keeping all minorities impoverished and weak, and especially black women. Bernie wants to raise the plight of all minorities and those struggling at the expense of the upper 1%. He is not solely focused on black women. He wants a society where people truly have opportunity and where race, religion, sexual orientation, and other differences don't matter. If Bernie were to succeed in his high, ambitious goal, then the leadership of the BLM would not have present power. They would lose their current identity in the movement, and the three founders are terrified of this. In fact, many times when others outside of black women who have tried to help their cause and grow the message, they become infuriated and attacked. If you think Ring of Fire is making this up, all you need to do is read the following writing by Alicia Garza, the co-founder of BLM, which is a full article is available at her story of the Black Lives Matter movement. Below are just some of the quotes. So I'm just going to read the quotes here. Okay, so you can read the rest of it. Everything I'm going to put up, address, is going to be posted on my footnotes on my speaker page for this episode, okay? Below are just some quotes. When you design an event, campaign, etc., based on the work of queer black women, don't invite them to participate in shaping it, but ask them to provide materials and ideas for next step for said event. That is racism in practice. It is also patriarchal. Straight men, unintentionally or intentionally, have taken the work of queer black women and erased our contributions. Perhaps if we were charismatic black men, many are rallying around these days, it would have been a different story. But being black queer women in the society and apparently within these movements tends to equally invisibility and non-relevancy. We completely accept those who benefit directly and improperly from white supremacy to try and erase our existence. We fight that every day. But when it happens amongst our allies, we are baffled, we are saddened, and we are enraged. It is time to have the political conversation about why that's not okay. Black Lives Matter is a unique contribution that goes beyond extrajudicial killings of black people by police and vigilantes. It goes beyond the narrow nationalism that can be prevalent within some black communities, which merely call on black people to love black, live black, and buy black, keeping straight black men in front of the movement, while our sisters, queers, and trans and disabled folk take up roles in the background or not at all. Black Lives Matter affirms the lives of black queers and trans folks, disabled folks, black undocumented folks, folks with records, women, and all black lives along the gender spectrum. It centers those that have been marginalized within black liberation movements. It is tactical to rebuild the black liberation movement. As stated in Wikipedia, the Black Liberation Army, or BLA, was an underground black nationalist militant organization that operated in the United States from 1970 to 1981, composed largely of former Black Panthers Party. The organization's program was one of armed struggle, and the stated goal was to take up arms for liberation and self-determination of black people in the United States. The BLA carried out a series of bombings, murders, robberies, which participants termed expropriations and prison breaks. It is an acknowledgement that black women continue to bear the burden of a relentless assault on children and their families. What happened here? One moment. Okay. It's an acknowledgement. A little freeze there. It is an acknowledgement that black women continue to bear the burdens of relentless assault on our children and our families, and that assault is an act of state violence. Black queers and trans folks bearing a unique burden in a patriarchal society that disposes of us like garbage and simultaneously fetishizes us and profits off of of us is state violence. In fact, that 500,000 black people in the U.S. are undocumented immigrants and relegated to the shadows is state violence. The fact that black girls are used as negotiating chips during the time of conflict and war is state violence. Black folks living with disabilities and different abilities to bear the burden of state-sponsored Darwin experiments that attempt to squeeze us into boxes of normality defined by white supremacy is state violence. And fact is that the lives of black people, not all people, exist within these conditions is consequence of state violence. And to keep it real, it is appropriate and necessary to have strategy and action centered around blackness without other non-black communities of color, or white folks for that matter, needing to find a place and a way to center themselves within it. It is appropriate and necessary for us to acknowledge the critical role that black lives and struggles for black liberation have played in inspiring and anchoring, through practice and theory, social movements for the liberation of all people. The women's movement, the Chicano liberation movement, queer movements, and many more have adopted the strategies, tactics, and theory of the black liberation movement. And if we are committed to a world where all lives matter, we are called to support the very movement that inspired and activate so many more. That means supporting and acknowledging black lives. Progressive movements in the United States have made some unfortunate errors when they push for unity at expense of really understanding the concrete differences in context, experience, and oppression. In other words, some want unity without struggle. As people who have our minds stayed on freedom, we can learn to fight anti-black racism by examining the ways in which we participate in it, even unintentionally, instead of the worn out and sloppy practice of drawing lazy parallels of unity between peoples with vastly different experiences and histories. Please do not change the conversation talking about your life matters too. It does, but we need less watered down unity and more active solidarities with us, black people, unwaveringly, in defense of our humanity. Our collective futures depend on it. As a founder of the BLM, make clear the movement from their perspective is all about black women. Anyone such as Bernie Sanders who wants to raise the plight of all struggling Americans offends them. They want the sole focus to be on them. They don't want peaceful movements that allows the lead of Martin Luther King. Instead, they were militant movement that follows the lead of the Black Panther Party. This is why Bernie frightens the leadership of BLM so much, because he is creating a huge movement of destroying the present system. When racist system gives the leaders of the BLM their voice, these same leaders rather keep the status quo. If we at Ring of Fire are wrong, then we ask them to stand up and take a stance. We asked them to stand up and take a very strong stance against what is occurring at these rallies and to state what their true goals are and how we can assist them to help struggling black Americans. As note of the BLM leadership, the way before they were born, Bernie Sanders was active in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, even joined the March on Washington, in which featured the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech in 1963. He is the only one of only two sitting senators who can say that. Also, he's the only elect white office holders who endorsed Jesse Jackson for president. So it's interesting there, even though I'm not a big Jesse Jackson fan, Bernie, like I said, I may not agree with Bernie Sanders, but what they made a statement, what these individuals in Seattle done was condemning, unacceptable, or other words, censured. And that's why when you have these infiltrators and or alleged provocateurs, it does give a black eye or a big major bruise in the movement, and it can affect everybody. So this is how I see things. What these ladies done, and I already made my statement from the past episode what I really thought, so you can hear it. Like I said before, is unacceptable, null and void. Their actions were dead wrong. And I've been to rallies. I know how to protest against certain things or be real critical of candidates. I do it with style and finesse. And if I call him bend over Bob's to New Order, absolutely. But I'm not going to go up on stage and think the world should revolve around me. That's totally irrelevant. So on that, here's this one person named Tracy Krause. Her name Tracy Krause? Yeah. Tracy Krause did one which is related to this whole incident that happened in Seattle, and it's entitled Slackers' Lives Smatter. These are idiots who hijacked the campaign speech of Bernie Sanders in Seattle. How ignorant do they have to be not to understand that Bernie is the one candidate for president who stood with black protesters before their parents were even born. Rude and crude. They hurt Black Lives Matter with this public temper tantrum. They needed to apologize to Senator Sanders and to the people who came to support and not listen to lips, low information people. So sadly misguided. This is by Tracy Krause. And she wrote on here, come on. Oh. Let me see here. There you go. Hold on here, I gotta sneeze. Woo! Sorry about that, my friends. As it reads here, these miscreants need to feel the burn. Update. Note these protesters are not members of the mainstream Black Lives Matter movement. They are a local offshoot of Seattle agitators. Nothing wrong with being an agitator. I'm one myself. But these women did not have the blessings of the founder of BLM, so they're not sanctioned by them. I just want to set the record straight. Have you ever been to a wedding party when the ex-lover shows up drunk and makes a fool of him or herself and ruins the evening for everyone? That's what happened in Seattle when several well-intentioned but sadly misguided representatives of Black Lives Matter showed up at a Bernie Sanders campaign speech and commandeered the microphones and the audience's attention. This is a brief blight on the movement. Thank goodness the national leader of the BLM apologized to Sanders in Seattle, but she needs to control the BLM activists and explain to them how Senator Sanders is the last candidate they should interfere with. He represents their interest more than any of the presidential candidates in either party. They need to feel burn and learn. And that was she wrote that. And I gotta say, hey, I don't blame you. All right, and Miss Cross is correct, and that's why I'm not the only one, and many other people are very critical of these glamour queens with their the dynamic duo. Okay, it's like Huey and Dewey. Come on, this is how I look at things. When I saw the video with the like little glam rants, temper tantrums, like the world should revolve around them. Forget it. Your presence at your exhibition once again were unacceptable, null and void, and I don't care what you think of all of your critics. And yes, I am a Caucasian and a proud freedom lover, sovereign thinking individual. You could use all your little pathetic nickel and dime comments about me. It wouldn't hurt. It just gives me more inspiration. And to everyone else that condemns the cause. And you're talking to an individual, and I'm addressing this as an individual who's not a diehard Bernie Sanders supporter. Don't get me wrong. There's times I agree with some of his views and his voting record. Others, I'm very critical, and I do that in good faith, based on the individual's actions. Yes, he has his pros and cons like everyone else. But what you ladies done, unacceptable. You are not members of the Black Lives Matters. Just a couple of jack-lanterns that you want to have be more powerful for your own personal gain rather than the common cause. And like I said before in my last show, you want to make changes? Do it in your own city. Don't go crying or arguing with individuals that are trying to run their lives, but have an honorable discussion instead of your little Walmart tirade. It doesn't work. It's contemptuous, unprofessional, and your attributes are null and void, and I am digressing, and forgive me. Alright, next one here came from the Federalist.com. Actually came out August 3rd, like almost last week. And I got to thank Michael Snyder from Economic Collapse. He has a website, Economic Collapse. He put this on his website. It's entitled Planned Parenthood Runs Zero Licensed Mammogram Clinics. It was by Sean Davis. It says here, Planned Parenthood is under fire for organ trafficking emissions. Made it senior executives in a series of undercover videos released over last month. The videos, 4 of which have been released so far, show numerous top Planned Parenthood officials acknowledging the purchase and sale of aborted baby parts and haggling over their prices. Planned Parenthood's nation's top abortion provider swears up and down that notwithstanding that numerous admissions made on tape by its top officials, the organization doesn't buy or sell organs and body parts harvested from aborted babies. And in order to defend its reputation, Planned Parenthood points to other medical procedures performed by the group that doesn't result in body counts. One of the top rhetorical gimmicks is referenced all of the mammograms that women can receive by visiting Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood helps women nationwide get access to mammograms as part of the range of health care Planned Parenthood health centers provide to nearly 3 million people a year. There's only one problem. Planned Parenthood does not manage a single licensed mammography facility in the U.S. Not one of the 8,735 licensed mammography facilities in America. Planned Parenthood operates exactly 0. How do we know this? Because the U.S. Food and Drug Administration keeps a list of every licensed facility in the country. It updates this list weekly, and most recent list more than 8,700 licensed mammogram facilities in the U.S. shows that not one is operated by Planned Parenthood. The following graphic from Alliance Defending Freedom shows just how little breast cancer screening is done by Planned Parenthood, especially compared to other non-abortion providers throughout the country. Planned Parenthood has even intimidated if its spigot of federal funding is turned off. Women will have nowhere to turn for vital health care and cancer screenings. But that's also a lie. As Molly Hemingway explains, it turns out that Planned Parenthood only qualifies as the nation's largest health care provider for women. If you think abortion, deliberate taking of a non-innocent human life, counts as health care. Sean Davis is the co-founder of the Federalist. Well. Can we say discrimination? What makes them special? Oh, because they're getting their monies from other places? Oh my goodness. Oh. Well, you know what? There's nothing new. When it comes to government knows best, it always backfires when you least expect it. But definitely, this is another example about your tax dollars at work. Hey, it's called free healthcare for those particular areas. So, I'm just mind boggled on a few things. But you know what? That's why when you do these fundings, they may just go down. There's other places you can do your mammograms and all that stuff. So, more bias for your buck, right? Whoop. Yeah, dog. You cut one, huh? Yeah, my boy Jake's hanging out with me. So this is here from the Medium.com. I just read this today. It's entitled, Nagasaki A-bomb survivors did not know they were hit by a nuclear weapon at time of attack. Absurdist. And it's by Marie Shibata. And it says here, Nagasaki A-bomb survivors did not know they were hit by a nuclear weapon at time of attack. Battered religious figures which stand watch on a hill above a tatered valley, Nagasaki, Japan. 70 years ago, there was no visual technology to broadcast the aftermath of the bomb dropped just 3 days before Hiroshima. On August 9th, 1945, at 11:02 a.m., survivors like Shigemi Fukuhori, age 14 at the time, have no idea they were also victims of a nuclear bomb drop by a US B-29 plane. When I heard the explosion, I had no idea it was an atomic bomb. Fukuhori tells me as we meet in a black room in Urakura Cathedral, where he is now a parishioner at age 84, but it was also so loud the ground shook incredibly hard. The moment my body felt the ripples of the explosion, I knew that it was an attack on a scale none of us had ever experienced before. Fukuhori, like many others who survived the attack, did not turn to media in the immediate aftermath for information. Back in those days, there was no TV or the internet, so it was impossible to see what damage looked like unless you're physically present where it happened. He says, either way, we don't know the exact weapon dropped in Hiroshima just 3 days before. All we heard it fell victim to a new kind of bomb. The same phrase had been used on the radio that was attacked on Nagasaki, but none of us had time to process the science behind the attack. We were just shocked with what we saw on the ground. The attack on Nagasaki was an outcome of a plan overturned at the last minute by U.S. forces. Despite setting their sights onto Kokura, another city also in Kyushu Prefecture, they switched their target to Nagasaki at the last minute. The sunny weather was there, a better opportunity to maximize the nuclear technology. More exposure to heat meant more damage what was going to be done. Fukuhori was an inside factory 3.4 kilometers away from the epicenter, where he had taken a day off from a Christian summer school when the atomic bomb had dropped. I survived the attack scarless precisely because I was inside a building in the shade away from the sun, he said. The same applies to my father, who survived because he was working at a weapons factory which could withstand any kind of attack. But I never found the bodies of my mother, my 2 brothers, 2 sisters, who were within less than 1 kilometer from the epicenter. The war had forced them to study at home, which, like all homes, were made out of wood. A few years after the attack, Fukuhori left for Tokyo to pursue his studies in theology at university. It was only upon his return after completing his studies that he had learnt of the weapon and saw it firsthand how now it affected his community. Christians who were regular attendees at Urakami Cathedral lived in the area. As the men were away fighting when the attack happened, it was women and children who lived in these two who suffered most in the years to come, he recalls. Many of the women I know had developed keloid scars as a result of the radiation from the bomb. Most of these women are now dead. When they were alive, they would not come out of the house as they felt judged for their appearance. Excuse me here, sorry about that. Sorry about that, folks. Many also chose to remain single, as they were also afraid they would give birth to disabled children. 70 years later, Urakami Cathedral projected a video on this newly reconstructed building to take audiences on a journey to retrace the series of events. Because I'm alive, I feel a sense of responsibility to continue living the message of peace, he says. As the head of the Virgin Mary statue survived the radiation with black scorched eyes, it's become a symbol of those who endured the pain in years to come, piecing together what had happened to them. Nagasaki must be the last to go through this ordeal. Sometimes I read a lot of these things, and I remember learning about some history, untold history, on my own free will and so forth. when a lot of the people in Japan wanted to surrender because they were losing the war. And there's even claims that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were mostly Christians. They decided to buy most two cities. In theory. And they try to say, oh, that's how you got to win the war with the atomic bomb. You know, and what really gets me about war, non-combatants, civilians, non-combatants suffer the most. Everyone go, oh yeah, the United States, they're bastards, they dropped the bomb on Japan, you know, and to end the war was unnecessary. And you gotta look at the other side too, what the Japanese government and their soldiers done, raped and pillaged all along Asia. Even from China, Peking and Singapore, like, they just rape and pillage a lot of people in those areas. And they had their problems in Vietnam as well. You know, it's a real shame, you know, because you got good people suffer from this. And you got those bastard governments, doesn't matter what you're from. They want to control everything, control our minds, manipulate, and doing it for freedom. A lot of people get slapped in the face in the long run. You know, and I just really get pissed off on a lot of things, you know, when it comes to stuff like this. And they even want to go, oh, we gotta go bomb Iran, this and that, you know, and you got politicians who want to do sanctions on countries. You know what? That's why I always been consistent. I say, you bastards go on the front line. Let's see how tough you are. And what happened to these cities, you know, when I learned it in the longer run, longer point of view, I get a little bit irritated. I don't go around praising it and all that. Because regardless of who wins the war, people lose, period. Lose your families, your friends, your loved ones, even your comrades. It's damn nefarious. That's why I've never been a, quote, warmonger. I'm pro self-defense. I have to prepare myself when it's necessary. Absolutely. I'm not going to argue about that whatsoever. But I'm not going to manifest and go, oh, let's go to war, and do the damn conflagration, drumbeat, boom, 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 and get orgasmic over it, because that's a total, complete turn-off. What happened in these two cities is just a very nefarious example of why man is considered the most vicious animal on Earth. That's even seen it from historical purposes. Even Anton LaVey's book, Satanic Bible, addressed that as well. It's not saying I'm a Satanist or anything like that. But it's something to think about. Now with the drone strikes and so forth, it's totally condemned. I condemn this with a confounded passion. So this is what I'm about. I'm not going to change anything. The more we learn, the more we share, the more we grow to become more honorable people. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. It's going to have its pitfalls, hurdles, and hitting walls. But what happens over here with these folks is unacceptable. Null and void. A lot of good people suffered from this. So, those folks out there, may their souls be forever free. We're not the enemy back then. The governments were. And that's why with the Pearl Harbor thing and all that, a lot of there's even claimed about it was Roosevelt had knowledge of it. There was enough information on that. And I did talk about that too on my Pearl Harbor episode. It was like December 7th or 8th or 6th, something like that, of last year. So you can check that out. And so, like I said, my friends, you know, no one really wins a war because the people themselves suffer from it dearly. That's why I'm against the military-industrial complex. I condemn the one world order. I've been pretty damn consistent at it. I know for a fact I may be on their crap list, but you know what? I don't care. I get inspired. And they can never take that away from me. So, enough said on this morose topic. Next one came from Natural News. Came out today to be exact. And it's entitled, Typhoon causes more radioactive water to flow in the Pacific Ocean at crippled Fukushima plant. It is by David Katira, a staff writer. And as it reads here, heavy rains from Typhoon Nanka caused radioactive water and saw the flow from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant and into the Pacific Ocean. Plant operator Tokyo Electric Power Company has admitted Fukushima plant has been shuttered since 3 of its reactors melted down following a March 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Since then, TEPCO has struggled to contain the constant flow of rainwater into plants' flooded basements where the water comes in contact with the reactor cores and becomes radioactive. The company has tried everything from pumping and storing the radioactive water to keep it from building such that it spills back into the groundwater, to building an ice wall to stem flow, but radioactive water continues to spill into the ocean. Heavy rains overwhelms TEPCO pumps. On July 16th, TEPCO announced that heavy rains from the approaching typhoon has filled up and overflowed a drainage channel containing radioactive water, causing that water to wash into the sea. 2 hours later, samples taken in the channel detect 830 becquerels per liter worth of radioactive cesium and 1,100 becquerels per liter worth of beta ray emitting radioactive elements. TEPCO also said that it is suspected that the rains had washed away radioactive soil and mud from the closure area around the plant, also conveying this radioactive material to the ocean. The problem, according to TEPCO, was that massive inflow of water, more than 700 millimeters, 3 inches per hour, in parts of Fukushima Prefecture, exceeded the capacity of plant's water pumps. Slow-moving storm made landfall in Japan in late of July 16th, bringing heavy rains and leading to the deaths of at least 2 people. 1 person fell while attempting to cover up windows against the storm, while others fell from a cliff while attempting to watch the floodwaters below. A 3rd person was swept away by a flooded canal and is still missing. Dozens who were also injured by the storm, including a 16-year-old who suffered a broken foot when a soccer goal post blew into him. On July 18th, the storm dissipated over the Sea of Japan. Worst disaster waiting to happen. As alarming as the release of more radioactive material is the result of the typhoon, could have been far worse. By the time that made landfall, Nanka was only the equivalent of a Category 1 tropical cyclone with maximum sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. Earlier that day, the storm was a super typhoon with sustained winds of 150 miles an hour. The government recommended the evacuation more than 450,000 people due to fear of landslides, and 88,000 were ordered to evacuate. More than 120 domestic flights were canceled, along with all train service in the affected regions. Many of the highways west of Tokyo were closed due to heavy rains and dangerously high surf. What could have happened if the storm of that strength had slammed into the Fukushima plant, which still contains melted down reactors, cores so reactive they would cause instant death to anyone who comes near them, even in the most technologically advanced protective gear. These concerns have been raised repeatedly by critics of nuclear industry, who warn the Fukushima disaster is far from over. Whatever TEPCO and the Japanese government might claim, both damaged nuclear reactors and spent fuel ponds contain vast amounts of radioactivity and are highly vulnerable to further earthquakes, tsunamis, typhoons, and human error, wrote the German affiliate of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War in July 2014. Catastrophic releases of radioactivity could occur at any time, and eliminating this risk will take many decades. And there's plenty of news sources to verify all this. I remember that time I was sitting in a restaurant in Fort Lauderdale. It was late at night, I say around 3 a.m. on that day, a horrific day, when I found out how the typhoon, March 10th or 13th, something like that, of 2011, when the tsunami hit. It was one fellow was complaining about South Florida. He was whining. He had his little clamoring, it made me about that fun. And I told him, do me a favor, look what's on television and shut up. He saw it, he freaked. He goes, that's in Japan. Major earthquake happened. He was pretty quiet after that. Always appreciate what you have, my friends. Complain is little petty things, I hear. I just take a dump and walk away. I always find it very annoying that you have nuclear power plants. Even the United States are on fault lines. I even hear from the people, even at Grateful Dead shows, talk about nuclear energy, nuclear power plants are real dangerous. And I gotta say they were right. Can't argue with them. I recall the time with the 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania or in Harrisburg. A lot of people still suffered from it, man. And they, I don't know if it's completely clean, but they're saying about 90% of them are cracked or not in good conditions. That's scary. Even the time I remember Chernobyl, that affected the whole all around Europe, and a lot of young kids are getting leukemia because they were growing up, the cells weren't fully developed. And now with this, affected the whole Pacific Ocean. It looks like there's even radiation counts all along Canada, along the Pacific coastline, including Alaska. And there's even state claims, too, that some of the whales are being offshore, they're radiated to death. And you want Barack Obama wants to get rid of the coal industry and do business with TEPCO, allegedly? If that's true, he's out of his confounded mind. I support the coal industry. It's not perfect, but they're doing better. It's a lot better than this. To all you so-called fanatical environmentalists, folks, better know your facts. All this climate change hysteria, which I'm not arguing about the ruining of the earth. I support Mother Nature as well. But don't listen to these lobbyists who only benefit will be themselves. They don't really care about you. But I do find it's very disheartening. And I hope and pray for the best of the people over there. You know, who are missing and so forth. Put them in your hearts, man. Do your blessings, for them and their families, because they need it too. Because one day it can happen. It can happen where you're at. Any natural disaster or anything like this, like nuclear fallout and so forth. It's really scratches my head. I'm just sorry. I'm just ranting, and forgive me on that. Yeah, finally, this is from governmentslaves.info, and this was entitled here, Indicted Ron Paul Aide is also the target of a police investigation into a mysterious missing laptop. This is by Rose Coma. On Wednesday, a trio of conservative operatives with close ties to Rand Paul and his father were indicted for their alleged role in an effort to purchase an influential Iowa's Republicans' endorsement of Ron Paul during his 2012 presidential bid. Mother Jones has learned that one of these operatives, Dimitri Kasseri, is also a target of a police investigation into a mysterious burglary last year at the Rhode Island home of a Ron Paul staffer who died in 2013. All that was taken, according to local police, was the deceased staffer's laptop. Kasseri, who served as Ron Paul's deputy campaign manager during the 2012 campaign, faces federal conspiracy, campaign finance, and obstruction of justice for his alleged involvement in paying more than $70,000 to then Iowa State Senator Kent Sorensen to switch his endorsement from Michelle Bachmann to Ron Paul ahead of the Iowa caucuses. The burglary cases involved the childhood home of the Kasseris' colleagues on Paul's campaign team, a young and well-known libertarian activist named Jared Gamble, who died in 2013 at the age of 26. Gamble had worked on both Paul presidential campaigns as well as on Rand Paul's 2010 Senate bid. He also had a connection to Sorensen's, whose 2008 campaign for Iowa State Senate. Gamble had assisted. Sorensen eventually acknowledged taking money from both Paul and Michelle Bachmann's campaigns and resigned his state Senate seat. He pleaded guilty to federal campaign finance charges last summer and is waiting sentencing. Last July, as the one-year anniversary of Gamble's death, an anonymous donor gave his parents a weekend trip to Maine, according to Gloucester Police Chief Richard Delpret. While they were away, their home was broken into. Delpret said it was not a typical burglary. No valuables or jewelry were taken, only a laptop Gamble had used for his political work. It also appeared they were specifically after a computer, Delpret said. And I will say that Mr. Carsey was and still is a target of this investigation. We believe he was involved in some way, along with others unknown to us right now. That's all I can say. It's an investigation, but we are not done with it. These content links are provided by content.aide, both content.aide and the website upon the links shared displayed may receive compensation which readers click on these links. Some of the content you are redirected to may be sponsored content. View our privacy policy here. To learn how you can use the content ad to drive visitors to your content or add services to your site, please contact info@content.ad. Don't worry, I'm not sponsoring it whatsoever, and they did not hire me to say this, folks. Sorry about that. A little commercial there, right? Delpret said the case still needs to be reviewed by the state police and federal authorities, but notes that he is confident his department will make an arrest. Considering his attorney, Jesse Benall, did not return multiple phone and email requests for comment. When Gamble passed away unexpectedly in July 2013, his death was mourned widely among libertarian activists allied with the Paul clan. Both Ron and Rand Paul posted condolences on condolence messages on their Facebook pages, and a YouTube tribute video featured appearance by key operatives associated with the Paul family's political machine. Sorensen opens the video, says how impressed he was that then 21-year-old Gamble had come to Iowa in 2008 to help him win his first election. Cassaro has worked in conservative politics as an activist, lobbyist, and campaign staffer who also makes an appearance. He recalled meeting Gamble when the activist, just 17 at the time, began working for the National Right to Work Committee, an anti-union group where Cassaro and other Paul family political operatives got their start. Okay, pretty interesting there. Prior to working on Ron Paul's presidential campaign, Cassaro has served as the NRTWC's Director of Government Affairs. Last year, Cassaro turned up on the payroll of Senator Mitch McConnell's re-election campaign. Since meeting at the NRTWC, Gamble and Cassaro appear to work closely together. During the 2012 Ron Paul campaign, Gamble served as the Director of State Operations. During that cycle, a company called Wiresnap LLC that was owned by Gamble, according to his LinkedIn profile, was paid more than $26,000 for political consulting by the Paul campaign. According to corporate records, the company is now defunct, but the most recent list registered agent is Cassaro. Cassaro was arraigned in Des Moines on Wednesday and pleaded not guilty to the federal charges. His trial is scheduled to start on October 5th. Well. This is another mystery, I would say. And I always tell everyone this: it better have merit. But sometimes they always you got good folks who are running for office and have dingleberries trying to run the show. And there's a video for this as well on here, so definitely check it out. And I just really got my goat too with the whole thing with especially the 2012 campaign, how Congressman Paul got shafted. You know, he had opportunity to go around the country and all that, including Florida, and never had, because he got these yahoos being infiltrated and trying to do things for their own personal gain. Well, that's one thing about politics. It's one filthy entity. You got good folks in there, but their team may be corrupt, can be corrupted. And that's what's very disheartening on what occurred here. But you know what? Some of these people claim they're not guilty. They better have merit that they're innocent. But the state or the prosecutors better back it up completely. We'll just have to keep tabs on this, my friends. You know what I'm saying? Alright, my friends. That is all for now. Thanks for listening to this episode. Plus, feel free on downloading and sharing this throughout your social media network. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, love letters, hate letters, compliments, criticisms, etc., always use it with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, send your comments to iHeartRadio, or you can email me at LokiLuck3, that's the number 3 to be exact, at gmail.com. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.